everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Association Chat. I'm going to give everyone a chance to start logging in. And if you want to just say hello over here in the chat box, if you're watching live, feel free to say hello, tell us how your day is, tell us what you've been thinking about, especially if you've been doing anything really exciting. We want to hear all those juicy details. And let's just give it a minute as people begin to filter in. So can everyone hear us okay? Definitely let me know if there's any AV issues. Hi, Rick. You're going on a cruise vacation on Sunday? Oh, wow. Nice. I am so jealous. That's amazing. Indianapolis. You know, I know the, I know, aren't we all jealous of Rick? Yes. I know the WebLink people who are based in Indianapolis, and they sent me this awesome gift basket around the holidays that had all kinds of great treats from the Indianapolis area. So I'm a big fan, big fan. Karen, that's awesome. I'm going on a cruise this weekend too. Glad to be escaping TC. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And yeah, Rick, you're familiar with WebLink. Yeah, they're great people. I've spoken at their event a couple times. All right. Okay, everyone. It's great to see you here. And I want to welcome you to this edition of Association Chat. This is your weekly online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm your host, KiKi L'Italienne, CEO of Amplified Growth Digital Marketing and host of this weekly chat that's been around since 2009. But wait, did you hear the latest news? Okay, this is actually big stuff. Association Chat is now accepting sponsorships. In fact, this spot right here, imagine it, could be where your brand and message is shared with this amazing community of association industry professionals. Just imagine the power of Association Chat sponsorship and contact me after the show for more information. In the middle of these interesting times, our country is experiencing all kinds of things. We are definitely watching all kinds of topics float to the surface, and diversity and inclusion are feeding some of the white hot topics and important issues that have many people concerned today. Yesterday, we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and the news cycle seemed, if not grim, the word could be watchful. So for years, associations, businesses, colleges, and all sorts of organizations have been working on diversity and inclusion issues. Some of these places are getting an A+ if we had to grade them for the work that they're doing to make this happen, and others not so much. How does this look in the association world? Are we excelling or just achieving a passing grade? How can we all work together to improve upon this even further? We're going to be talking about this today, and more today with the help of Shawn Boynes. Shawn is the Executive Director of the American Association of Anatomists, that's another AAA, and also serves on the Board of Directors for the American Society of Association Executives. Not only has he served on the Board of Directors for ASAE, but he's also part of the Board of Directors and Diversity Executive Leadership Program, the fantastic DELPers. I love DELP so much. So has experience with DELP as well. And so I think you have some of the DELP scholars and at least former scholars and volunteers who are on here giving you some love today, Shawn. So welcome DELPers and welcome everyone else who might be tuning into Association Chat for the first or maybe the 31st time, who knows? We're going to really jump right in and get into these topics right now. So Shawn, are you ready?
I am ready.
Fantastic. So first and foremost, why does D&I remain a hot topic in association management? Why is this something we're still talking about today?
Well, before I get to that, I want to thank you for having me. I know that you've hosted many, many great association people for your chat. So I am honored to join that group of people. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm honored that you're here.
So one of the things I did want to mention related to diversity and inclusion within the association context is that it's hard. It's tough. You know, there really is no cookie cutter formula to get people started. And I think with most people, you have to be willing to have the conversation. And I think that's the roadblock that many choose not to really try to get over. And you have to have the tough conversation with your staff. You have to have the tough conversation with your board and your other volunteer leaders. And you have to have the tough conversation with your membership to figure out what's best for the particular association that you may be involved with. And that may be different from what another association finds important. So as you think about getting started, and associations tend to, you know, delay in trying anything new because they want to see what other associations have tried, what's been successful, what's not. It's one of those things where it's like you're not really going to make any progress unless you just jump in, tackle the tough conversations, and make it happen. And it's not something that's going to be done in a short period of time. Diversity and inclusion is ongoing. It takes a very, very long time to figure out, you know, what's going to work, and then you have to remain committed to it as well.
You know, I think that many executives get nervous even, you know, approaching these topics, you know, because there are so many. Each company, each association has nuances in its culture and in some of the particular challenges that they may be facing. And so for all of the reasons that you mentioned, and for the fact that, you know, every organization is different, it's going to be a challenge. So, you know, I guess from the CEO perspective, what have you observed with D&I at the C-suite level?
There's still a lot of work to be done. And you can, for those of you that may subscribe to CEO Update, you know, just open up an issue of CEO Update or go to their website, and what you see is very homogenous. And it's something that I've actually discussed with CEO Update editors. And I don't think that it is intentional by any stretch of the imagination. I think they work with what they have. But I think the bigger question is, and this is a whole nother level of discussion that needs to happen, it's with search firms, search professionals, and search committees. So these are the groups that have the opportunity to create diverse slates of candidates for selection in these CEO roles. And if you're not starting there, the people that you're pulling in are not going to be different from the ones that may currently already be sitting in those CEO seats. So I think that's a different level of conversation that needs to happen that may not be happening. But from where I sit, it is still very bleak. There are not enough women in CEO roles, visible CEO roles. And I mean, for the big associations, the big trade groups. Right. And there certainly aren't enough underrepresented groups that are in CEO seats. So we have some work to do. And I think you can have a pool, but if the pool's not being tapped into, it's not going to make a difference. So I think getting to a point where we can hopefully encourage search firms and search professionals to make sure that they are presenting diverse slates for consideration for these positions, it's not going to look any differently than it did for the past, 15, 20 years, which is unfortunate.
That really is unfortunate. But then I look at things like the DELP program, and I think, the DELP program, for those of you who are out there and not familiar, even if you're somewhat familiar with it, I've never participated in DELP, and I've been so sad that I couldn't because to be honest, very supportive community. And this is all from from my perspective, watching an observer, being aware, knowing some of the people who are involved. But I see on social media, I see, especially when articles come out mentioning the good works that come from DELP. I look at that program and I think, what a wild success. And why can't there be a DELP at every organization? And it's actually wildly encouraging, because I think that the support of the network that's there is so strong. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you guys are like I mean, it's like family. It is truly like family, at least from what I can tell.
It
And
is.
so, you know, it's like, I even like, I'll catch like inside jokes and like things that you get. And I'm so envious. That's the kind of thing that I think encourages change and can help reach into these places that maybe historically have not had as diverse of you know, a C-suite or as diverse of even throughout the entire staff, but especially in the C-suite, and those higher, most visible positions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, I want to talk a little bit about examples. Now, you are in the C-suite, you are CEO, and you are in the position where you can affect change. So could you give me some examples or share with us some examples of what your organization is doing to address D&I?
It's a very timely topic for the organization that I lead. We actually just embarked on our journey, and it started last year when we were at our annual meeting. And there's always these stories. There's usually a trigger for something. We were at our annual meeting, and you know, we have awards like most associations do, and we were featuring our top award winners, and we had a huge meter board with pictures of the individuals, their names. And it just turned out that they were all white men. I mean, even staff, we did not catch it. It was something that, you know, the selection committees for these awards didn't catch it. And it wasn't until someone that was at the meeting representing another association took a picture of the meter board and started tweeting about the lack of diversity within the Anatomy Association.
Wow.
And he went on a rant about this particular issue. So
Wow.
I had to bring it to the attention of the leadership immediately and say, hey, how do you want to respond to this? And that opened up the opportunity to have a deeper conversation about what we needed to do as an organization. So fast forward, the board had the critical conversation and recognizes that there's so much work that we need to do. You know, in the science space, it's no surprise that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. You know, there are STEM programs and that sort of thing to help bring in underrepresented groups, but it's hard. So
Yeah.
we're working through a process now of we've identified our task force. So we have a group of very engaged members that are interested. We do have some board representation on that task force because those are the people who are in positions of authority that can make the change happen. And trying to figure out what is our diversity statement going to be. We need to figure out what's going to work best for our organization. And then from there, identify some metrics. But I think there's commitment. We're about to go into a refresh of our strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be part of the conversation. If we can get some, you know, priorities and goals in the strategic plan, then everybody should be focused on it. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to figure something out that's going to work best for AAA. But at least we're having the conversation. And that was kind of, you know, what I said at the beginning of this discussion, getting over that hurdle of having the conversation. It's something that is critical, and you know, it may be awkward, it may be uncomfortable, but you need to just plow through it and have that conversation. And I have the support of the leadership to make this happen. And I think we'll see what happens, but I'm anticipating that, you know, I'll be reaching out to my association colleagues for guidance around some of these things as I approach them.
You know, I think that that's something you said there about being able to have those difficult conversations, even if they're awkward, you know. And I think that for so long people, and it's natural, you know, we don't want to sound uninformed. We don't want to sound, we don't want to sound awkward. We don't want to look awkward, especially if it's around people that, you know, we care about, you know, we're positioning and we're trying to maybe move up the ladder or whatever. And so it can be difficult to have these conversations. However, like most things in life, if you're ever going to accomplish anything that's worth merit and like really worth fighting for, you have to go through those awkward times. You have to go through the stuff that doesn't feel so good, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, you know, it was pretty eye-opening for us because we also had never really taken a look at, you know, associations always collect data, you know, in our database, we have tons of data, and we never really looked closely at what we were collecting. And once I, you know, got together with staff and we took a look at our, you know, demographic information, male, female, you know, ethnic, cultural diversity, LGBT, that sort of thing, it was pretty eye-opening. I mean, we saw where we were really, really lacking and where we needed to focus our attention, but presenting that to the board also provided a baseline for this is where we are. Ideally, where would you like us to be? Like, what's the aspirational goal for this association? So I think having data is also important as you begin on your diversity and inclusion journey, and making sure that you're able to, as a small staff, one of the things I worry about is that we're going to be stretched too thin. That's always the challenge when you work in a small staff environment. But making sure that you're going to be able to commit the appropriate resources to whatever efforts. You can't just talk about it and, slap up a diversity and inclusion statement on your website. You have to put resources behind it. And that may mean hiring additional staff. That may mean providing a budget for a task force or a committee to work on. But it goes beyond just lip service. You have to demonstrate that. And that's one thing I will say, plugging the DELP program, and a quick shout out to all of my DELP colleagues that are online with us this afternoon. Yeah. But, ASAE has been at diversity for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think having a diversity committee and all of their efforts to improve diversity within the association community, I think DELP is a demonstration of the inclusion part. We're the pool that they go to and provide opportunities to when they need to have different voices, when they need to have different perspectives at the table. And there's still work to be done. But nonetheless, I think, DELP represents that we're the pool. And for organizations that may not have a pool, then create one if you don't have it. We're about 178 strong now, I think. So, over 17 years, the program has grown and will continue to grow. But, I give ASAE credit for staying committed to this program. And that's one of the best ways that you can demonstrate the inclusion part.
I love that you mentioned that too, because it's amazing that ASAE, and smart and wise that ASAE stays committed to the DELP program. But just as much as they stay committed to the DELP program, the DELPers stay committed to each other. And not only that, but I see that commitment reflected back to ASAE, which I think is an important point to make, because organizations that create this pool, which, why not? Like it's a very wise idea. You want more diversity. You can't always immediately go out and find the diversity that you're looking for. So why not grow it? Why not grow it within your staff and create those opportunities and look there for those different voices? But wouldn't that encourage those people, those staffers who work for you, and wouldn't it make them want to give back too? And I see that consistently with many DELPers. I don't know, obviously every DELPer, but with many, I see that they are constantly looking for ways to give back, because they feel that benefit of having that community. And so I just want to say, for the people who are watching right now, I have a poll that is on this chat. And the poll question is, how would you rate your association on its diversity and inclusion efforts? And so take a moment, take the poll. I'd be curious to see what happens by the end of this chat. And then also, as we're going along, this is your action motivation. If you feel like being active, and we're talking a lot about taking action on ideas and on things that we care about, take action and tweet or share the fact that we're having this amazing conversation right now, so that people see what you're listening to and who you're talking with and what's important to you. All right. So, and Karen, yes, we can see you. So there you are. I can see you. So yeah, and Adrian says, would love to see more of the organizations we belong to be more committed to understanding D&I and doing something about it, actually doing. So absolutely. Absolutely. It's stunning. So I want to ask you a little bit more about your own experiences with DELP, and maybe sharing a little bit about how it's been important to you, because I know that you've been super involved.
Oh yeah.
And and you have, you're about as involved as you can get with ASAE. Am I right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I think since being involved with DELP, and I say this, and a lot of DELPers will probably say the same thing, but it changed my life. I've connected with some amazing people and built really strong relationships. But on the professional side, I would say I don't think I'd be sitting where I am now, not in my kitchen right now, but professionally in my job right now, had it not been for the DELP program. And I remember having a conversation with Velma Hart, who's a former chair of
oh,
the
I love
ASAE
Velma.
board, and she's been around for a while, and a lot of people do know Velma. But one of the things that she said to me, she said, "Show up, just keep showing up." And that's what I did. I took full advantage of the opportunities that came my way. I volunteered when the opportunity presented itself, and I kept showing up, and I still show up. But I will say, I can't do it alone. I need, other people to also do the same, underrepresented groups and people, because when you walk into a room, and there are lots of CEO meetings that I go to now, and I'm the only one, the only person of color, the only gay person in the room, or whatever the case may be, and that still is a bit awkward, but at least I'm there. And that's something that I will always do, is to show up and to represent and to do my best to make sure that my voice and voices like mine are heard and at the table.
I can appreciate that, and I think that that's also something that everyone can benefit from thinking about and meditating on, and taking. That's great advice, no matter who you are or where you are in life. And I think that being brave enough to show up and to do the thing, and even when it's tough, that is, what was it? 90% of success is showing up. I don't know if it's exactly 90%, but I will say that showing up does take care of quite a bit of whatever you're facing.
Yeah.
So, I think that programs like that, like DELP, can be hugely beneficial. And we've talked a lot about that. But for people who are, say, middle management, and they're working in associations, we have a lot of industry providers here too in the association industry. And, and they're looking around and they're saying, what can I do? Like what kind of power do I have in my position? I'm not at the tip top of, the chain, and I'm not sure that I have any sway. What do you say to them?
I think we all have sway, and it just depends on how you go about letting your voice be heard. A lot of times you sit back and you're silent because you don't think you have enough influence to bring about change. But if you are sitting in a room and you're in a meeting with your colleagues, and everyone around the room looks like you, they may think like you do, and just kind of really just be there, why not just say, hey, maybe we need to bring in some other perspectives? Or if you're having a conversation with your boss about, your career trajectory, there may be someone else that you can speak on behalf of. It's like, it could be a colleague, it could be a person that's, junior to you, but, just, it goes back to having those tough conversations. And I think once people realize that you have a commitment and a passion for diversity and inclusion, I think they will be more inclined to want to engage with you along those lines. And if not, then maybe you just find another way to go about getting your voice heard. I learned a long time ago professionally that, sometimes we always look for the accolades, or we always look for the thank yous. And someone said to me, well, as long as you get what you want in the end, does it matter, who gets the accolade? Meaning sometimes you have to work around and sell your idea to someone else who can sell it on your behalf. And as long as the outcome is what you wanted, don't always look for the ego strokes or the pats on the back, because that's just life. You're not always going to get it. But if you get the outcome that you want, then so be it. And that's a skill, that's a strategy that, I've used throughout my career, trying to get things done, trying to move the needle a bit, because sometimes people won't respond to you the way you expect them to because of who you are, and especially if you're different from them. So find another way to sell your idea. Find an ally that can speak on your behalf and let that person sell it for you.
I love that. I think that's really good. And actually, at this point, I would like to share with everyone. That's actually a really critical point, because one thing that I realized a couple of years ago that I was doing that was wrong is that I have a really valuable network. I know a lot of people in this industry, and really great relationships too. I mean, I know you. And so, I mean, I have a lot of really fantastic connections. And I realized that in my conversations that I couldn't say exactly what anyone was actually doing in their career. I could tell you what we talked about at the networking reception, but I couldn't tell you what their specialty was, what would light them on fire and make them excited. I couldn't tell you where they worked or what their position was. And I hadn't really paid attention in digging into and paying attention to that. And that goes for not just conversations, like I'm going to interrogate you when I meet with you, but that also goes for when I was accepting LinkedIn, connection requests and stuff like that. I'd be like, oh yeah, I know who they are. Well, that should be your first level, right? Mm-hmm. Of figuring out how to network with people. But you need to look at when you are talking with someone, I'm always looking for it now. How can I provide value to that person? And what that forces me to do is to ask more questions and to look at what that person's doing. And so it's kind of a weird, I guess, sort of a weird approach to really paying attention and not being selfish and focusing on the other person. But it allows me to understand better where they're coming from and what they can do. And when you do that, you can do things like imagine a dream team of people that you would have in different positions if you had a choice. You're better at connecting people because you can see how they can help each other. Mm-hmm. And that, for me, was a mindset change that when I realized I wasn't leveraging my connections as well as I could, I on purpose changed that. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably most people are naturally better at that than I was. Maybe it didn't take people to maybe you out there are watching this and you're like, well, gosh, KiKi, I've kind of been doing that my whole life. So good luck on you. But if you're like me and it took you a little bit of time to realize that, wow, Scott Oser, I don't know what you're doing, or like what your specialty is, which I do. But, if that's you, then think about the ways that you can change that, because it can help you, especially in like this, we're talking about D&I today. It can help you in that way that you can start to put things together. And when people say we want more diversity, you can think, aha, I have some ideas that might work. So anyway, that's definitely something that I've had to work on, and just a strategy that has worked for me.
And I do want to touch on something. Karen Hansen had posted something about accepting proposals for their conference right now. And I think we all struggle with this. There are people in all of our associations that are, your super volunteers, as we refer to them, the people who always volunteer for stuff when they have the opportunity. But when you think about that, you tend to default to the people who will deliver.
Yes.
But sometimes you have to really cast your net wider. And for those of us that are in positions of influence, when I do get requests from people like, hey, Shawn, do you know anyone who can talk about X? Having a good network is great, but if you're not nurturing that network, to your point, KiKi, getting beyond the surface level conversations and getting to know what makes people tick and what their careers, their career goals and aspirations are, then you're not really doing much, but just kind of meeting people. And I think networking nowadays is much richer than that. But when you have that strong network and you can help influence who gets the opportunity to speak at conferences or present at things like this, then use that influence. A lot of times people don't know who's out there, but if you're in a position to know, make those recommendations, say, hey, what about this person? What about that person? And a lot of times it's the people who aren't as plugged in as they could be. And just having the opportunity may turn it for them. It may turn
Right.
into, oh my gosh, I had such an amazing experience. I'm going to now do more volunteer work with ASAE or any other organization that they may be involved in. So it's, casting your net wider and making sure that you try to tap into your own network of people. And that's why, I always say networking is like a part-time job, because when you do it well, it does require a commitment of your time.
Yes.
And, nurturing those relationships with people so you can get to know them.
Right. Nurturing those relationships. And then also, so while you're thinking about what the other person facing you, who they are, what they're doing, how you can provide more value to them, also act on that, like put yourself out there too, and not like put your business card out there, but like let them know how you guys could connect and work on something. Like I used to feel really, really weird about sort of saying, hey, if you ever need a blog post or if you ever need an article written, come to me, because I love that stuff. I probably did do that more than some people do, but I definitely held myself back at times when I thought I knew that this other person was working with something that I wanted to be a part of, and I didn't say anything. And so make it easier for other people too, to know how because we gotta make it easier on other people, just like we want them to make it easier on us. So.
Absolutely. And I just see a great posting from my buddy Tamala, talking about the difference between sponsorship and mentorship, and she's dead on. Absolutely. And I think we can do more of that, and that's all of us, in terms of, that's the inclusion part, right? It's bringing people in and providing them with access to others that they may not have had access to otherwise. And that's a critically important component of the D&I discussion as well.
Oh my gosh. Hey, you know what? Do you want to jump on here too? I can bring you on, right? Are you ready? Do you want to come on?
She is awesome. Tamala's
that
awesome.
Would be amazing. That's actually a really good point, and I would love it. I'm not even kidding. Like I can actually bring you on if you want to. I'm waiting to see if she's gonna hide or if she's gonna come on another time. You two finish your discussion.
You're on the list now.
Oh, okay. All right. She's like, my lighting isn't good. I don't know. That's okay. I'll get you another time. That's okay. You need to come on here though. That's a really great point. Yeah. I know, I get you. I think that that's a really good point though. Mentors versus sponsors, Excellent point. And I did not think about that before. So, and Adrienne says she's going to bring you my way anyway. So that it's now officially going to happen. If Adrienne's involved, it's now official.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. If you had a crystal ball and you had to look into the future and say, okay, what's going to happen with D&I and the association community in the next 10 years? What would you like that crystal ball to show you?
I'd like that crystal ball to show me that we have made much more progress in a relatively shorter period of time. And what I mean by that is, having more women and people of color at the C-suite. And I think the interesting thing is they're there, they're primed, they're ready. It's just getting through that search process and being on the radar of search professionals so that we can assume the roles that so many of us have been preparing for. And I think that's going to happen. We've all talked about this in our respective associations, but there's going to be this huge shift happening once the baby boomers decide to pass the baton, if you will, whether it be through membership, and stepping away and opening up other leadership opportunities to the generation that follows or generations that follow. And also in leading associations, I think you have people that have been in their roles for a very long period of time. And I just don't think the likelihood that, I know an exec who's been CEO of an association for 30 years, that's like unheard of now. Like, first of all, most of us can't last that long. You kind of burn out and you need to kind of move on to the next association, a different profession, or whatever the case may be. But I think we will see the shift happening whether the association community is prepared to receive it or not. And that's what I'm hoping we can be prepared to receive it, because when it's forced upon you, then it's not welcomed. So I'm hoping that we can all prepare ourselves for, and I think, the generations behind me, they're much more engaged, tend to, not to stereotype generations, but tend to be ready to step up and take on these roles. So I'm more optimistic than I probably would have been several years ago with what the association community will look like related to D&I in the near future.
So there's some interesting questions. I don't know if you've had a chance to look down here and peruse them, but we've had a few really good questions come in from the people who are watching right now live. And, I think a couple of them have to do with the Rooney Rule, like similar to the NFL. So let me talk about this one in particular.
Okay.
So based on what Shawn said about search committees, search firms, etc., do you feel associations should have a Rooney Rule similar to the NFL? The Rooney Rule is a National Football League policy that requires league teams to interview minority candidates for head coaching and senior football operation jobs. And I think this is what Tamala was mentioning. She actually links to a post in the Washington Post that I think has to do with this. So what do you have to say about that? I really wasn't familiar with the Rooney Rule, to be honest.
I think it's, starting the conversation with them, because I don't even know if they think it's an issue. They are paid for their services, and they are paid by the client. The client is typically the boards of these associations. And if you're paid for what you're told they were looking for, why would you think any differently? Why would you challenge your client to have a diverse slate? So it's sort of like, that's the difficult conversation that needs to happen. Yes, ASAE could probably, convene the groups to have those conversations. I'm not necessarily sure that, because these are the members that are leaders within associations, many of which are not members of ASAE. It's the staff that's leading the associations that are members of ASAE. So that's the disconnect there. But the search firms, many of them are plugged in enough where they should be willing to have those conversations and raise the bar a bit related to how they engage with search committees, because they could easily have that as part of the process that they work through to identify candidates. And I only know this because I sat on a committee that helped select search firms for an executive director search. And one of the first questions that this search firm had related to diversity and inclusion. And I think it shocked a lot of the search firms, because I don't think they get that question very often on search committees. Yeah.
That actually makes me think that would be a really good conversation to have on here. Like, what if we talked about D&I kind of like what we're doing today, but then had search firms, like had a recruiter on to represent that part. And, I think it would be an interesting conversation to look in that direction a little bit more, because that's not a conversation that I've really heard.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's happening. And if it is happening, it's happening in a vacuum, or it's happening in pockets. And it needs to be a bigger conversation. And a lot of times, now that I am in this role and working with the board, no board wants to replace an exec. And it's a heavy lift. These are volunteers, remember. These are people that, they want to ensure that their association will be able to do whatever it is that they, their mission is. And then when it's time for them to fill the CEO spot, it's a big deal for them, because, it's a lot of work. So they have to rely on the expertise of the search firm to get them through it. So I don't even think it's on their radar in many instances to say, hey, other than what kind of leader are we looking for? The next question, or the series of questions, should include, let's address diversity and inclusion as part of the kind of leader that we want. So
Right.
that's where I feel like these search firms can play a big role in helping to change the discussion or even raise the discussion with search committees. And I just don't know if it's happening enough.
Wow. So Tamala over here is giving us some more information about the Rooney Rule, and Eric weighed in about, how it opens doors to folks outside the normal structure of interaction. Mm-hmm. Really interesting stuff, and I think it's definitely worth, I know I'm going to look more into it, and I think that anyone who's watching this probably should. But those conversations, that would be another great excuse to have a conversation, is to talk a little bit about the impact that might have on associations. Great idea. And hey, anyone who wants to write an article about that, that'd be a good one. Associations Now, are you listening? Let's talk about it.
I agree.
So another really great question that was asked was, what are appropriate metrics for D&I?
I think it's going to depend on the association. For example, my group, we have yet to even get to a point to identify what those metrics will be. We're just kind of getting started with coming up with the diversity and inclusion statement. And one of the things that I think people tend to want to stay away from is, counting, and I think that's just, that may be part of it. You have to start somewhere. And if it's counting the number of women that you have, counting the number of African Americans that you have, counting the number of Latinas, counting the number of,
or question mark, like the person, I was just thinking, I was like, wow, if I had to do this for association chat, how would I go about doing it? Because it's not like I check, it's not like I think about my guests as, put another X by African American, I think, unless they're from the Caribbean, and then I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
But how would you know without having a baseline of 0 to whatever the number is? And that's where associations tend to get stuck. It's really, it's like you got to count somewhere and figuring out, okay, that may be baseline, but then where do we take it the next level up? And that may be, how do we get to the inclusion part? How do we get to increasing the representation at the leadership level? How do we increase the people who are receiving awards? Those sorts of things. But if you don't know where you are, how are you supposed to measure how you're going to improve in any particular area?
That is interesting. Yeah. So what questions? So help me out. So guide me through this, because I haven't really looked at it on purpose. But you know what? I practice what I preach. So, it's like, I think that it's a smart idea, and I definitely want more diversity. So what do I do with the association chat? Do I look back? Do I start by looking back at all the guests I've had in the past year, and then guess, like try to go by and do a count of how many women, how many African Americans, how many, I don't know. I mean,
well, I think it's starting even before that, what's your purpose? Why are you, I mean, I know you, but, trying to be diverse and inclusive, you need to have a purpose behind that. And then figuring out, are your business practices aligned with that purpose or mission, however you want to phrase it. And for you, could be a good opportunity to extend your reach in pulling in more people. I mean, certainly there are a good number of DELP that are participating today that could be future sitting where I'm sitting, you know what I mean? Like future content leaders,
Yes.
Chatting with KiKi. So I think you just need to figure out what that is based on what your purpose is for this association chat.
Well, I think, I'm up for the challenge, but hey, Tamala and Adrian and Stephanie and Eric, Karen, you guys watching, you're on the hook too. You guys can help me with this process and help. If you have tips or guidelines, you can send them my way. Mostly because I'm serious and I actually want to I'm going to try to do this. And that way, if I ever end up in a discussion like this again, I can give an example of what I did and explain how that then changed my approach to providing content, and maybe even eventually benchmarking against what that meant for my audience in the future. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Thanks
Okay,
for
guys?
rising to the occasion.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's do it, definitely.
Model the way.
I mean, I'm willing to admit I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I will do my best and I will promise that. All right. So I guess we've talked about looking into the future, and now I want you to take a look at the now.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to look around you, Shawn, and you see the opportunities and the challenges that are here. And what is the greatest challenge to you? And I'm going to get deep, sorry. What's the greatest challenge to you right now when it comes to, pursuing a greater understanding or a greater acceptance of D&I and promoting that in the association space?
Well, I think sometimes, there's an assumption because you may fall into one of the underrepresented groups that you have the answers, and I don't have all of the answers. I mean, certainly I can speak from my personal experience and share what I've learned along the way. But, that's one of the things, and I'll share this with you if we're, getting deep, but one of the things that I was, quite frankly, a bit afraid of stepping into this role as exec of an association. At the time, I had, it's 5 staff. I had 4 white women that worked for me, and my board is all white. I did not want to come into the role out the gate addressing diversity and inclusion issues as the only person of color in leadership. I just didn't want to do it. And I was worried about that. I knew there was an issue, but I'm glad that it kind of bubbled up the way it bubbled up. And of course, then I was able to kind of grab the reins. And now I'm leading them through this process of trying to make sure that we're doing what's best for AAA. But I didn't want it to be, okay, now we have a person of color leading our organization, and diversity and inclusion all of a sudden becomes important. Mm-hmm. So I'm sensitive to that. And I think I'm probably not the only one that feels that same way. But, I can't sit back and ignore the reality of, what it was, it was very clear, and this is, certainly you will talk to people and there's diversity of thought, there's diversity of experience. But I think for the purpose of the conversation we've been having this afternoon, it's the stuff that you can see. It's male, female, it's ethnicity, it's culture, it's LGBT in some instances. But, when you're talking about diversity, it's easy to get caught up in all of the other distractions, but you have to be laser focused in how you're going to do what's best for your organization. And that's where I think it gets really, really tough.
I think so too. I mean, it's definitely something where, and you're so right. I think that there are people, if we're really honest, I think that there are people sometimes that are just waiting for me to say something that is feminist, and it's like, well, of course she's worried about that. She's a woman, of course. She's one of those, crazy feminazis or whatever. But you have that in your head, and at some point you have to say, I mean, there's a question of timing. There is a question of, I think there's a question of, and this is so hard because there is no, right or wrong that's easy to see, I don't think, because, for instance, when is it that you're being wise to bide your time and to make the move when it will be best heard, and when people are most receptive to it, to meet them where they are, right? And when is it important to charge ahead? Because if you waited, you know that you'd be waiting forever. And there's a delicate balance there. It's not easy, I don't think.
Yeah.
Or is it? What do you think?
No, it's not easy. I think it's very challenging, whether you are, a person of color in an underrepresented group, or someone who may not have ever had any challenges related to diversity and inclusion. I think recognizing that it is a problem is, step one, and then figuring out a way to address the problem. But that's the hard part. It's like, if you've not had anyone ruffle feathers, so to speak, and things seem to be going just fine and revenue's coming in and there have been no complaints, the assumption could be, well, why do we need to address it? Everything seems to be okay. Well, yeah, it's sort of like the duck that's, pedaling through the pond. On the surface, it looks like it's okay, but you look under the water and you see the legs that are going really crazy to keep it moving. And I think that's where associations need to do a better job of just looking at the data, peeling back that curtain and seeing what's behind the curtain to get at what's really happening. Because what's on the surface isn't always the reality of how people experience engagement with a particular association.
Right, right. So I want to give everyone a chance to share with us their biggest takeaways from this conversation, because every time we have one of these association chats, I think it's fascinating to see what people, I always look to see who's tweeted what and who's posted what. And so if there was something that really hit you and that you are taking away from this that was valuable, please share it over in the comments or tweet it out, or, however you want to share your comments with us. Tell Shawn about it. Tell me. But I think it would be fascinating to hear your thoughts on this. Shawn, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today.
Fun.
It's been absolutely a complete blast, and I would love to have you back on. We're going to force Tamala to come on too, and
I'll make sure Tamala comes on.
Okay, good. So did you hear that? It's going to happen. Good lighting or no, Shawn's going to make it happen. I've been trying to get Adrienne to join me, and she won't do it. So this has been going on but it's a fight worth fighting. I'm willing to fight that fight.
Good to know. I'll work on Adrienne too.
All right. Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and discussing such an important topic. And before we go, I want you to know what's coming up next week. So next Monday, yes, I said Monday instead of Tuesday, there is Community Manager Appreciation Day. And if you look at hashtag CMAD on Twitter, you're going to find all kinds of information about that. I am partnered up with Ben and Maddie, and I'm trying to think who else is on this. Maggie. If these first names mean nothing to you,
it's a great group.
They're superstars. They're just amazing. Yeah. And we're working on this Community Manager Appreciation Day project all day on Monday. I am going to MC the conversation and be with the show the different segments throughout the day. But Association Chat will be happening at 2 p.m. Eastern on Monday. And I will be talking with the 5 o'clock films and media guys about video. And I think we have another couple of guests that might be joining us with that too. So it'll be a really good thing. So video for associations, how associations can use it for community. The next thing that you want to know about is the week after that, we'll be back on Tuesday, and we're going to be talking about how to have massive creativity in your community. So still sticking on that community topic, and we're going to be talking with Kayla Holitz, and that's at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Again, it's always at 2. The following week, it'll be Jeff DeCania talking about Foresight First Leadership. And then on Valentine's Day, yes, on Valentine's Day, I am going to be coming to you live from Jamaica and doing Association Chat, yes, on vacation, because I am crazy. So I hope that you will join me for that. I hope you've had fun today and that you've learned something that's going to help you and your association now or in the future to improve diversity and inclusion. If you like Association Chats, please consider sharing this chat with your colleagues and give us some love on social media. And as always, if you want to continue the discussion, you can join the Association Chat Facebook group for regular updates on upcoming topics and special guests. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I will be looking at all your posts later. Thank you for your help.
Bye.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Something that's always bothered me my entire life has been when I walk in and see decorative candles that are unlit, furniture that is encased in plastic, things that should be used that are not being used. This applies to information too. I am a speaker because I have something important to share with people, and that's the information that I work in every day. When I went into learning about other components of digital marketing, that's when everything lit up. I suddenly realized how I could help people. The thing that's really exciting is that the more that I speak to different types of organizations, the more I see that a lot of us are all struggling with the same things. And whether it's as a consultant, or whether it's as a keynote speaker, or whether it's as a session breakout speaker, or I'm delivering a workshop or training or facilitating a panel, I can say, okay, well, here's what people are looking for. Here's how they're finding you now. Here's how they could be finding you. And here's how you can take your message and meet them where they are. So when somebody leaves the room, I want them to say, I got something out of that, and more than that, that's something that's going to positively impact my life. That's what I'm all about.